Welcome. I'm Doug Morgan, and you're listening to Uncommon Sense, where we hunt for the truth in the topics you're not supposed to talk about, Christianity and politics. In politics, image and narrative is everything. I hear many conservatives complain that liberal Democrats just lie about all kinds of things. They say things that are easily fact-checked and don't have any grounding in the truth. They ask, why would you say that? They say things because they're trying to capture the narrative. It doesn't matter what is true. If you can make people believe it's true, you will gain power. One of the things we are hearing a lot of lately is that ICE and Trump are Nazis. They have lost the narrative over the border security. And so they're trying to compensate by making people believe that the Trump administration and ICE and everyone, well, they're all a bunch of authoritarians about to bash in your front door and kidnap your mom or something, right? Well, the White House the other day put out a statement documenting some of this rhetoric, and I wanted to bring it to you. It says, as ICE valiantly defends our sovereignty and communities, here is a list of 57 times Democrats have recklessly, deliberately stoked hatred and division against them. One is Minnesota Governor Walz smeared ICE officers as a threat to the public, called ICE reckless, suggested the state is at war with federal officers and under attack by ICE, and smeared ICE as the modern-day Gestapo. California Governor Gavin Newsom, who, of course, wants to be president, liked ICE to secret police, calling them authoritarian and calling for people to push back. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, again, somebody else who wants to be president, claimed ICE is turning the country into Nazi Germany. New York Governor Kathy Hochul accused ICE is terrorizing people. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, again, somebody else who wants to be president, claimed ICE officers make our neighborhoods less safe. Minnesota Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan said ICE officers cause chaos and terror. Senator Chuck Schumer declared that ICE does not belong in our neighborhoods. Senator Tina Smith called ICE a clear and present threat. Another senator smeared ICE as a reign of terror. Senator Jeff Merkley liked ICE operations to fascism and claimed officers are doing nothing but terrorizing our communities. Of course, Bernie Sanders had to get in on the act, asking people to stop ICE from what they are doing as soon as possible. Senator Elizabeth Warren, of course, Pocahontas, she claimed ICE is intentionally stoking fear and tearing communities apart. Kind of what they're doing. But anyway, Senator Ruben Gallego said ICE exists to scare the American public. Another senator, Senator Warner, equated ICE officers to a brutal dictator. Dick Blumenthal, senator, accused ICE of spreading lawlessness and recklessness. Another senator, accused ICE of indiscriminate violence. Another senator accused ICE officers of committing atrocities. Representative Ilhan Omar said ICE is state violence, called officers vile and beyond cruel, and stated abolishing ICE is not enough. Another representative, Jayapal, called ICE officers deranged, accused them of kidnapping, said residents' resistance to ICE is inspiring, and claimed ICE officers will shoot at you and kill you. Yeah, that's not stoking the fire, right? Representative Eric Swalwell smeared ICE officers as masked thugs, called them terrorizing bandits, and it was his priority to ensure officers are no longer faceless, comparing them to the KGB, and demanded that they stay the F out of California. Representative Jasmine Crockett, the brain trust of the Democratic Party, compared ICE to slave patrols and called them thugs. Another representative said ICE is the single biggest threat to public safety right now and attacked ICE as a terror force. Representative Lee said ICE is out of control and a police state. Representative Presley called ICE a rogue, violent agency that has no business in our community and must be abolished, and accused ICE of terrorizing our communities. Representative Mark Pocan demanded ICE get the F out of our cities. Representative McCain Delaney called ICE lawless. Representative AOC called ICE an anti-civilian force, and ICE should not exist. Again, another presidential hopeful. Representative Tlaib said ICE is terrorizing our communities and turned our country into a fascist police state, called it a rogue agency, and called for it to be abolished. Representative Julie Johnson excused violence against ICE as people channeling their frustration. Representative Laura Friedman said ICE officers are terrorizing our friends and neighbors and bringing chaos and violence to our streets. Another representative called to end legal protections for ICE officers. Representative Bynum said ICE is a state-sponsored terror. Representative Garcia referred to ICE officers as thugs. Another representative urged people to fight back against ICE abuse. Representative Kelly smeared ICE as the Gestapo and a betrayal. Representative McIver incited people to shut down the city because we are at war. Representative Frost compared ICE operations to the worst horrors and crimes against humanity. Representative Larson said ICE is the SS and the Gestapo. Representative Lynch smeared ICE officers as the Gestapo and nondescript thugs. Representative Goldman compared federal officers to secret police who must be unmasked. Representative Blunt called ICE vigilantes. Representative Garcia said ICE brings nothing but terror and violence and warned ICE officers they will be held accountable for terrorizing our community. Another representative called ICE officers dangerous and reckless, while another one said that ICE has terrorized people through racial profiling. Representative Underwood accused ICE of a horrifying campaign to spread fear and violently snatch people from our streets. Representative Cohen accused out-of-control ICE officers of misusing their authority. Representative Castro called ICE a rogue organization that should be disbanded. Representative Maxine Waters, always unhinged, said ICE was causing mayhem and death. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry demanded ICE get the F out of the city and accused officers of terrorizing our communities. New York Mayor Mamdani, of course, said that ICE enforcement is an attack on us all. Chicago Mayor Johnson accused ICE of being secret police who are terrorizing our communities and said ICE was a lawless, racist force. Boston Mayor Wu compared ICE officers to a neo-Nazi group. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass accused violent ICE protests as just like a Lakers championship. New Jersey State Senator Timberlake threatened that ICE officers will find themselves in the same position as those who carried out the illegal acts in Nazi Germany. Minneapolis City Council member Robin Walsley claimed ICE is carrying out terrorist attacks. Los Angeles County Superior Janice Hahn called ICE dangerous, and the vice mayor of Coney, California, Vice Mayor Gonzalez implored the violent 18th Street Florencia 13 gangs to help out and organize against ICE. They want gangs to do that. So, yeah, I quickly went through that list. Liberal Democrats do this so much that even their own people are starting to get concerned about the dialogue. In fact, this comes from Politico, of all things, article. Adam Wren writes for them, and he wrote just late last year that Democrats seem to think they can talk their way out of the political wilderness. Listen closely, you can hear it through the din of their all caps triumphant X feeds, their hours long manosphere podcast interviews, and their more frequent swearing. It says, soon after the 2024 elections, and the party is still embroiled in self discriminations over where they're talking, what they're talking about, and now the actual words they're using, or more precisely, which words they shouldn't be uttering. in a new memo, which I'll get to here in a second, which was shared exclusively with Politico, they said, the self-centered think tank Third Way is circulating a list of 45 words and phrases they want Democrats to avoid using, alleging the terms put a wall between us and everyday people of all races, religions, and ethnicities. It's a set of words that Third Way, which is the memo that came out under Third Way, suggested people simply do not say, yet they hear them from Democrats. So normie people don't say these things. They span 6 categories, from therapy speak to explaining away crime, and put in sharp relief a party that authors say, well, makes Democrats sound like extreme, divisive elitists and obfuscates enforcers of wokeness. So the document titled "What Was It Something I Said?" was published in Third Way and argues that to please, and this is the quote, please the few, we have to alienate the many, especially on cultural issues where our language sounds superior, haughty, and arrogant, according to this memo. Among the blacklisted terms, privilege, violence, as in violence of environmental violence, dialoguing, triggering, shaming, a lot of different things on here. We're going to get to this list here in a second, but they said, we are doing our best to get Democrats to talk like normal people and to stop talking like they're leading a seminar at Antioch, says Matt Bennett. Third Way's executive vice president of public affairs is what he is. He said, we think language is one of the central problems we face with normie voters, signaling that we are out of touch with how they live, think, and talk. In recent weeks, this has become a bit of a thing, with comedians like Jimmy Kimmel and Sarah Silverman highlighting how insane Dems can sometimes sound. Also, elected officials like Representative Sarah McBride and Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear are begging their colleagues to just be normal again. Quote, people can't relate to something unless it has some edge about it, said Erickson. That's Lanny Erickson, Third Way's senior vice president, by the way. And he says that, quote, and we had shaved off all of our edges in an attempt to never make anyone upset about anything, unquote. The group doesn't base its list on any specific polling, and the authors don't offer specific counter recommendations for these terms, but they do outline the values their vision and party includes, which, quote, we will never abandon our values or stop doing things to protect those who need help, encouragement, trust, and second chance, acceptance, a fair shake, and the opportunity to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. But as the catastrophe of Trump 2.0 has shown, the most important thing we can do for those people and causes is build a bigger army to fight them, is what the memo reads. The community in authentic ways, communicating in authentic ways that welcome rather than divide and drive voters away would be a good start. And it's worth noting that in certain parts of the country, a lot of people, especially now, do talk in this language and use the phrases third way recommends against, even if it does scream big tent, doesn't scream big tent enough. It's also worth noting at an inherent irony in all of this. They said it's hard to police how politicians talk at the same time that they're asking them to be authentic. The memo's authors write, we are not out to police language, ban phrases, or create our own form of censorship. Yeah, you are. But truth be told, we have published papers that have used some of these words as well. But when policymakers are public facing, the language we use must invite, not repel, start a conversation, not end it, provide clarity, not confusion. And I want to stop right here. I'm going to push back against this. I really think that they use many of these words because they are trying to repel us as conservative Christians. They don't want to start a conversation. They would like to end the conversation because discussion and conversation doesn't usually go well for them. They are trying to end it. They're not trying to start it. They're not trying to provide clarity. In fact, it's most of the time it's trying to muddy the water so that they can just simply get their way. You throw your hands in the air and say, "I give up," and it's because they're creating all that confusion. So anyway, I would say just the opposite of what they're saying here. But anyway, let me continue. It says, quote, "The Democratic Party brand is toxic across the country at this point, with way too many people, enough that there's no way for us to win a governing majority without changing that," Erickson said. "Part of the problem was that we were using words that literally no normal people use, that we were sticking to messages that were so overly scripted that they basically sounded like nothing." All right, I'll agree with that. What about bright spots for the party? Erickson cited 3 potential 2028 Democratic presidential contenders who she says are good examples of how to communicate. Beshear, the former transportation secretary, Pete Buttigieg, and Senator Ruben Gallego of Arizona, Democrat there. Now, Gallego is doing a great job, she said, about economic success. She says that he goes into communities and he's like, "I want you to have a big A truck if that's what you want." And see, again, I'm going to stop here. I mean, that was the way it was for a long, long time in this country. And it's not that way anymore. If you have one of those big old trucks or whatever, that they don't want you to have that. They don't want you to have that because, it's a gas guzzler or whatever, and you need to have a Prius. I mean, it's so don't say that it's okay to do it when you rally against it when people actually choose that. Well, Buttigieg, she said, is doing a great job of going into spaces that are maybe a little hostile, but usually spaces not for him to be in, and having real conversations about complicated topics like transgender people in sports, and saying, I think you should have empathy toward people that are figuring this issue out for the first time. Again, this is Buttigieg trying to be as middle of the road as he can. And Beshear is getting this so exactly right, talking about how these terms aren't even what those communities used to call themselves. She says she recalled Beshear talking about the fact that that justice involved individuals. Justice involved individuals. Can you guess what that is? Yeah, criminals. Is not a thing that any justice involved individual would call themselves. They would call themselves incarcerated, call themselves convicted, or they would call themselves a whole lot of other things, but that's not what they or their families would call themselves. So inventing terms that the people that we're talking about and trying to protect don't even use, and then enforcing that's the only way you can talk about those people, is crazy. I agree. It's crazy. So yeah, it is interesting. Democrats really talk their their way out of power oftentimes. And what they're trying to do here, they're trying to talk their way back into power by trying to go a little more middle of the road. They've gone so far left that they sound just, well, they don't sound normal, right? Federal agents violently confront protesters. Judge says Trump administration must let lawmakers make unannounced visits to ICE detention facilities. House Democrats once again left complaining about Senate spending deal. You see, these are the type of things that they need to be talking like. Instead of using these terms that are just weird and that type of stuff, if they want to regain power again. And they said, in some ways, Third Way is reaching the same political conclusion Vice President J.D. Vance arrived at during his interview with Fox News, Laura Ingraham, saying, I mean, look, the autopsy of the Democrats, some feel political advice from the President of the United States is stop sounding like crazy people, is what Vance said. Yeah, you need to stop sounding like crazy people. This is not normal, right? Not normal speech. Vance remarks came on the same day that he had burgers with National Guard troops at Union Station, which is itself a glaring reminder of some of the stakes if Democrats don't get this right, they said. So, yeah, I mean, this is a problem for liberal Democrats. They have gone so far left, and their constituency, the people that they have attracted are crazy leftists, and they have to go hard at this type of speech in order to keep them. But that alienates the normal type people, right? So I wanted to read to you the Third Way memo of the different words that they're not supposed to say now. And it says, for a party that spends billions of dollars trying to find the perfect language to connect to voters, Democrats and their allies use an awful lot of words and phrases no ordinary people would ever dream of saying. The intent of this language is to include, broaden, emphasize, empathize, accept, and embrace. The effect of this language is to sound like the extreme, divisive, elitist enforcers of wokeness. To please the few, we have to alienate the many, especially on culture issues where our language sounds superior, haughty, and arrogant. In reality, most Democrats do not run or govern on wildly out-of-touch social positions, but voters would be excused to believe we do because of the words that come out of our mouths, words which sound like we are hiding behind unfamiliar phrases to mask extreme intent. Well, that is what they're doing. I mean, come on. Seriously. The Democrats have come down on the 20 side of just about every 80-20 issue. We did a podcast not long ago on this, of all the different 80-20 issues that they come down on the wrong side of. And they come down on that side because they've embraced the radical, crazy left. So he says, why the tortured language? Well, after all, many Democrats are aware that the words and phrases we use can be profoundly alienating, but they use it because plain, authentic language that voters understand often rebounds badly among many activists and advocacy organizations. See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. They will alienate their far left if they don't talk like this. These activists and advocates may take on notable causes, but in doing so, they often demand compliance with their preferred messages. That is how birthing persons became a stand-in for mother or mom. And if we don't think more carefully about our language, many in America will be banking on help from Donald Trump and Republicans because Democrat levers of power will be few and far between. They said in this memo, we are putting a spotlight on the language we use that puts a wall between us and everyday people of all races, religions, and ethnicities. Finally, we are not out to police language, ban phrases, or create our own form of censorship. Truth be told, we have published papers that have used such words as well. But again, I say, Yes, you are. Yes, you are. You are specifically trying to do those things. And again, what you're trying to say here is that you want to sound more normie, but you aren't. Okay, so let's take a look at some of these things. And these are the therapy speak type words. Okay, I'm not going to read them all. I'm just going to go down through some of these. And we started obviously with privilege, violence as in environmental violence, dialoguing, othering, triggering, microaggression, micro assault, or micro invalidation. I hadn't heard that one, but anyway, progressive stack. Progressive stack. I have to look that one up. Centering, safe space, holding space, body shaming. We've heard that one, I don't know how many times. And they said, be aware of words profiling in elite circles that have closed off open conversations and have made it uncomfortable for many people to engage in hard topics. Okay, so let's go to the seminar room language. All right, this ought to be good. This is the language which says, I'm smarter and more concerned about important issues than you. Your kitchen table concerns are small type of thing, right? So looking down their nose at you, which again is what they like to do. Subverting norms is is a phrase they shouldn't be using. Systems of oppression. Oh yeah, we've heard that a lot. Critical theory. Yeah. Critical race theory. Yeah. Let's keep talking about that because people have finally woken up on that one. Cultural appropriation. Oh, I love cultural appropriation. Cultural appropriation is, of course, like if you shouldn't be eating Mexican food if you're not of Hispanic descent. Because definitely you shouldn't be making you shouldn't be making tacos, let's say, because that's cultural appropriation. We should not be doing that. Postmodernism, yeah. Overton window, oh boy. Yeah. Existential threats, like existential threat to climate or the planet, democracy, or we hear democracy a lot now, when obviously the left could care less. Couldn't care less about about democracy. I mean, they're all about Marxism. When we use words people don't understand, well, studies show that the part of their brain that signals distrust becomes more active, undermining our ability to reach them. How about let's go to the organizer jargon. These words say, we are beholden to groups, not individuals. People have no agency. Okay. Again, a lot of this stuff is what they believe. That's why they're using this. Okay. Radical transparency, small d democracy, barriers to participation, stakeholders. Oh, we hear stakeholders all the time. The unhoused. Oh, I hate that one. Unhoused. Okay. They're homeless. They're not unhoused. Food insecurity. Yeah, food insecurity is when I can't make up my mind what restaurant to go to. Housing insecurity. Person who immigrated. And I would even say immigration. I mean, that's a word that they obviously misuse and abuse all the time, because somebody who is in this country illegally is not immigrated here. They're not an immigrant. They're an illegal alien. You can immigrate here and you can do it legally. But anyway, Democrats can fight for the poor, the hungry, the homeless, the immigrants more effectively if they speak in everyday language and in the language of those most affected by these issues. Okay, let's go to gender and orientation correctness. This ought to be good. They say, of course, pregnant people, birthing persons, inseminated person. Oh, wow. I see. I hadn't heard that one. Inseminated person. Chest feeding or chest feeder. I've heard that too. Cisgender. Dead naming. Oh, dead naming. Yeah, that's a good one. Heteronormative. Of course, the LGBTQIA plus. I'm surprised that one's actually on the list. But they said standing up for MAGA, cruel attacks on gay and transgender people. I'd like to know an attack there. Anyway, it requires creating empathy and building a coalition, not confusing or shaming people who could otherwise be allies. All right, so let's get to the last one here, and the last one is the shifting language of racial constructs. These are words signal. These words signal that talking about race is even more of a minefield. You will be called out as racist if you do not use the latest and correct terminology. And again, I know I sound like a broken record today, but they're using this because that's what they believe. Okay, they believe if you do not believe the way they do, then you are racist. If you do not hold the same values or ideologies, all this, if you don't use the same words, then you are racist. That's what they say. All right. Anyway, let's get to the list. Latinx. Yeah. Well, what Latin person uses the word Latinx for themselves? Nobody. BIPOC, allyship, intersectionality, minoritized communities. Yeah. They said, as we fight racism and discrimination, we should reflect upon whether the words we are using are part of the reason Democrats are losing support from all non-white voter groups. We must know when we take a step back and listen instead of peppering our websites, fundraising asks, and newsletters with sociological buzzwords. So actually, there's one more list. I know we're getting late here, but one more list I wanted to cover here on this, and that is explaining away crime, which they love to do. They want to explain away crime. This is the criminal is the victim. The victim is an afterthought type mentality, which is what they have. So here's the words that say that. Justice involved, which we already covered that one. Carceration. Incarcerated people. Involuntary confinement. Involuntary confinement. People deserve, that sounds like a kidnapping. Anyway, people deserve to feel safe where they live, work, and go to school, and we can't defend the progress we've made on criminal justice reform or hope to make more unless we acknowledge the reality in plain terms. So like I say, I mean, this is just nonsense. I mean, this is obviously what they believe, and now they're understanding that some of their rhetoric is actually backfiring against them because they don't sound normal, which they aren't, right? I mean, they do not represent the majority of people in America. They represent the far crazy left. That is where they have taken that turn. They have taken a drastic turn to the left. The Democratic Party, liberal Democrats, have taken a hard left, and they have left behind normal people, and they don't talk like normal people because they don't believe what normal people believe anymore. So anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Of course, you can always do that at uncommonsensepodcast.com. Thank you very much for listening. This podcast is a production of Morganite Communications.